pleased to say that that is totally cross-party. Bill Anderson is totally with us. It's good to see Stephen Metcalfe here because we worked closely with Thurrock's MPs in opposing this. And you know, we've got good reason for opposing. Each of the three options that were put forward were really bad for Thurrock. Option A, as it was called and still is called, is to put a further crossing alongside the existing crossing at Purpley. That does absolutely nothing to improve the resilience of the road network, as it's called. Anybody who lives here knows that when it's windy, when things get busy, when there's a snag on the bridge of any sort, everything in the western part of Thurrock just clogs up. I've been stuck in it, most people here have been stuck in it. Option B, which has now been thrown out by government, was a kind of a local crossing that was coming up through Grays Beach Park in Grays and would do very, very little to add any extra meaningful capacity. Which leaves us option C here, which is without doubt the most expensive of the three options, and ecologically and environmentally is an absolute disaster for people that live in and around this part of Thurrock. And not only that, it runs a real risk of just replicating the kind of problems, the kind of gridlock that we see regularly in the west of the borough here. And then everybody that lives in the middle would be caught between the two. And as far as I'm concerned, it is absolutely unacceptable. The other point that I really do think is worth making, and making again and again and again, is I just do not believe that a case for a further crossing here in Thurrock has been properly made. What we know is that for every one of the last 10 years, bar one, use of the crossing has actually gone down, not up. So that goes back before the recession, before the downturn, usage going down. I think the last thing for me to say before I hand back is that last summer we ran a consultation exercise as the council. We had around 1,000 responses. 80% of those responses said no to options A, B and C. We culminated that campaign with a kind of public meeting that we held in the central offices in Grays, which was really well attended, well over 100 people, and I know that many of the people that were there that night are here again this evening. What we need to do following this evening is to get the issues that are raised in this room, the ideas that are raised in this room, the suggestions, the questions, and harness it all once again so that we can get ready for fighting the next stage of what is our campaign against this crossing.
Proposals for a lower Thames crossing, I'll try not to repeat what John has said, have the potential to change the very face of Thurrock. And I am actually very pleased that we have managed, up until this point, to avoid turning it into a political issue. Governments of both colours have looked at a lower Thames crossing. The previous government looked at it, and the current government is also looking at it. And it is, I think, only by working together that we will be able to influence any kind of change at all. Now, for the record, I opposed all three options, and I oppose the current two, option A and option C. But we are here tonight to specifically talk about option C and the impact that that would have. And I want to give you a bit of an update on what is happening politically. I hear very clearly what John says about the usage of the current crossing and the fact that it's falling. But with so much growth going on in the Thames Gateway, I think it is inevitable that traffic will want to cross the Thames at some point further west than it does at the moment, further west than London, further east than London. So we have to accept there is a problem, so it's a question of what do we do to tackle that. Now, there has been a consultation about option C, and I hope that many in this room will have received correspondence from me encouraging you to take part in the consultation. There were street stalls that were held. I took part in the consultation and made sure that your views were heard loud and clear. I met with the Minister and subsequently the Secretary of State and handed him a big chunk of emails that had been sent to me, pointing out all the reasons why option C was such a terrible, terrible idea for Thurrock, cutting it in half and cutting across the ancient fenlands, dividing the historic community. It is a disaster area. I've asked questions in the House, I took part in the Westminster Hall debate, I've asked PMQs about this, I've recently met with the Prime Minister and explained to him why the options are wrong for Thurrock, and most recently, today, I met with the Minister responsible for this, Robert Goodwill, and discussed with him the current state of thinking. And I want to give you a little update on that. I can categorically say from within the last few hours from the Minister's mouth that no final decisions have been made, and that neither of the two options currently on the table holds more weight than the other. Both have their benefits from the government's point of view, and both have their downsides. With regard to the specific route, there isn't one. I know that there has been speculation about plans that have been found on the Department of Transport's website showing a route and how the engineering solution might be achieved. But it is a broad brushstroke at the moment. There is no route. And finally, with regards to allowing the free-flow tolling to get into place first and seeing what the impact that would have on traffic flows, I think the government is now minded to go with that, to see whether or not it does have a significant impact.
Political, a servant to the council, and my role here this evening is to ensure that I don't get involved in any party politics, but to try and give you the facts as I see them as the government takes forward its proposals. We're in a position where, as has been already said, no decisions have been made. No decisions on whether the corridor should be A, through the present crossing on the M25 and the QE2 bridge, or whether it's option C.
Matters. The problem is to try and alleviate the problem on the M25. Now, if we just bring a spur off, all we're doing is dividing the traffic, but it won't have any massive impact on the amount of traffic that's actually using the M25. Now, my logic, and I'm sure most of the people in this gathering would say, that if they were to proceed with option, I believe it's option E, which is an extension of the A130, what in fact that would do, it would take all the traffic from Suffolk, Norfolk, the Colchester and Ipswich area that wanted to go down to the Channel Tunnel, the crossing, the ferries. That would take a massive amount of traffic off of the M25.
We've made it very clear that options other than A, B and C should be considered, but the government have ruled it out. They've said the preliminary investigations did look at options D and E, further west towards Southend, that they were unsatisfactory in highway terms according to the Department for Transport, and at the moment the work that's being undertaken by the government's consultants is only A and C.
I have great sympathy with that view, and that was what I was trying to put across in my speech, that we need to look, be more ambitious in our aims. Now, I hear very clearly what David says. He mentioned about decision making this summer. It's the speaker I'm picking up, sorry. Right, about decision being this summer and only A and C being on the table. Well, my discussions this afternoon with the Minister were slightly different from that, in that they are now minded to wait to see the results of free-flow tolling. Well, that won't be in place until October this year, so that means the decision would go past that. And secondly, we are lobbying hard to get the Minister and the Prime Minister to see the merits of doing something more ambitious further out into the Thames estuary. So while the
our family's been in Orsett since 1730, so I feel as a resident I can survive a little bit of this. I think we've got to get away from, not in our back garden.
Can you speak up just a little bit,
Sorry.
sir, please? Thank you.
Not in my back garden, which is, well, to make any interest to those who have the power to do the job. But surely we could have experimented with doing away with the tolls, as we were promised when the tunnel was first built. And a lot of the periphery roads, nobody said anything about. Take us one small example, so I don't have too much time. Take the A130. Anybody know how to get on from the A130 onto the A12 going towards Colchester? You've got two roundabouts, you've got two sets of traffic lights, you've got 5 lanes going into one. Now, unless
It's difficult to pick up the issues that you raise in a meeting like this, but the council has been making the point that the investment in the local roads should come first. So, for example, the free flow tolling, the works are starting now. October the 26th, the free flow tolling starts. There will be then 6 months of engineering works to take the toll booths away, and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit put in towards the tunnels. I won't go into that in great depth now, but there's going to be a lot of traffic management that I've been talking to the Highways Agency about. By the way, the tolls are going up 25% at the same time, and I've requested that the tolls should not go up until the engineering works are completed.
Good evening everyone, I'm Damien Waters and I'm a resident of Orsett. I have been for 7 or 8 years. A couple of things strike me as a cynic, as I'm sure there's probably many in the room. Number one, I think the government have already made a decision, and this is actually just a load of old nonsense. It is. And I think if they want to make the decision to build a road, guess what they're going to do? They're going to build a road regardless of what we say, or whether any small animals are going to get injured in the process. They don't care. I think one thing that strikes me is that whilst we're saying, and I've heard it so many times tonight, that there's no decision been made, I actually think that this road plays a bigger part in what's happening up the road in the Isle of Grain and Buffoon's, Boris's Island. And I actually think if you look at all of the artist impressions that are appearing all over the press at the moment, any keen viewer of television or anybody that reads the papers and actually looks at these impressions, guess what road crosses the river? Well, I can tell you it's not A and it's not B, it's definitely looking very, very familiar for option C. And that's why I think that actually the government have made this decision, because all indicators towards option C are bloody ridiculous. It costs too much, it has a big environmental impact. The only thing it will do is serve this stupid airport that Buffoon is planning, and guess who's going to pay the price for it? Us. So, as much as I would love to sit here and think that politics is playing a part in this, I actually think
it's cynical. But actually, there is no decision made, because you're right. Option C has a huge environmental impact, it's far more expensive, the economic case doesn't stack up terribly well, and it answers a question posed 10 years ago. Option A, it focuses all the traffic on the existing crossing, so it doesn't give sustainability or or resilience to the network, and just focuses all the traffic. Again, doesn't really meet the economic case. The Boris Island, I personally think, will never happen. At 60 to 80 billion pounds, I think it's just a very, very pretty drawing. A very pretty drawing, but it's never going to happen. And actually, option C would do nothing to link Boris Island up to the north coast of the Thames. Okay, you can say to me that we believe it's happening, that the decision has been made. I truly believe it hasn't been made, and that this isn't all a waste of time. We've had the consultation. We need to keep plugging into that, and I keep plugging in that this is the wrong option, the wrong solution to the wrong question. We need to be more ambitious, and that's what I'm saying to the Minister, the Secretary of State, and the Prime Minister at every opportunity that I can.
And before any concrete decision was made, for all the people who are affected, all the people who live in this area, Stephen, would the ministers, would the decision makers come down to a meeting like this and face these people?
No, we'd go to them. We'd go to Downing Street, a lot of us.
Would that be a wise thing to do you think?
Well, Thurrock would go to Downing Street.
Okay, well, obviously someone just calm down a second. Yes, ministers have been down here. There have been meetings. If and when any decision is made, I'm sure the minister will come down here. But as I say, we can shout the odds, we can go and march on Downing Street, but that won't actually constructively change the decision. What ministers need is alternative options that can be evidenced so that they can change their minds, and that's what we are trying to do. Collectively, all the political parties are working on this together to avoid it being option C.
All right, we'll come back to the questions in a moment. Just one more question that does occur to me, and that is that we were promised, I live near the crossing, and have done for years, and we were promised that the tolls would be taken off after the bridge and the tunnels and everything else have been paid for. They haven't, and it might actually do some good. I know we were told that they're going to put them up again, but quite frankly, I'm getting fed up with paying it. How much longer do we have to do it?
Well, it's a very good question. Nothing would make me happier than to see the tolls scrapped. The bridge was paid for in 2002. The original proposal had been that once it was paid for, a small maintenance fund would be established and then they'd be scrapped. And guess what? That didn't happen. The government of the day got used to the money coming in, and it's quite a significant amount of money, and now, unfortunately, it forms part of the government's budget. The money that's currently coming in...
So they lied to everybody. They lied to everybody. They actually said it was going to come off, so they actually lied to everybody.
I'm not going to use the word lie, but it was the arrangement, as I understand it, had always been that once the bridge was paid for, the tolls would be scrapped, and then they went back on it.
And is there anything that you could do to perhaps bring this back into the arena of possibility?
We keep mentioning that it should be free because residents have paid for it. And of course there is a residents' discount in place, but that aside, I agree, it should be free. I'm not going to defend that position. The problem now is that the government's become became dependent on the money, and in the current economic climate it can't just give up the money that's coming in. It's actually using that money now to fund the free flow tolling and the road changes that are happening there, and I am hopeful that that will make an impact on the flows at the crossing, and that will help us to evidence that option C is not the right decision.
Mike Revell, I'm the councillor here for Orsett. I hope to be here in 2041, by the way.
Well, if you are, I will be.
Can I just say that I've been opposing option C right from the word go, from the year 2009, because that was when the first preliminary paper came out, the consultation, which actually offered about 7 or 8 possible crossings of the River Thames. Now, in that consultation, that was presented to the ministers now in Westminster, and the crossings to the west of us and to the east of us were ruled out. If you look at the up-to-date paper and the original paper, the M25 is scarcely mentioned. But if you talk to residents outside of Orsett, outside of Chadwell, outside of Thurrock or Gravesend, everyone, I think, is agreed there ought to be another crossing. So I think it's limp of us, and I've said this before, to actually say we are against option C. Because if we do that, we will get option C. We've got to oppose it. And I'm not a defeatist in this, because there are chinks in the armour coming.
Where would you like to see it, Councillor?
Well, let me explain what I think. The problem is not the crossing, it's the M25. The crossing is just part of the M25, and by the year 2040, it's quite plain we're going to need, as they have in France and most other capitals of the world, a ring outside the M25. You were talking about transport going to East Anglia. At the moment, if we have crossing option C, it will feed into the M25. And all the traffic that goes not just to East Anglia, to the Midlands, to the north, and to Scotland, dependent or independent, the traffic will have to travel into the M25 and then possibly up the M11, the M1, all those roads. The congestion will be horrendous. So we do need some way of bypassing the M25. And option D, to my mind, is the only option. In fact, part of the road is already built. The A130 already bypasses Chelmsford on that.
Let's just get an answer.
With me at the moment, so let's keep it that way. Because what we want is a very strong voice from this meeting. Not we're against option C, we're pro option D, and we give the constructive reasons why we want it. And there are very, very good reasons for having option D. It is a far more forward-looking economic answer to much of the problems we have already. For any of you who are travelling to the north, going up on the M1, going up on the M11, the A1M, as I often do going up to Leeds, it's an horrendous journey.
On the A12, they're looking at that corridor improvement on something called a freeway, which is a new concept for a road. It's motorway standard, but not a motorway. And that is the proposal that's supported by Essex County Council. The government are bringing forward proposals for the A14, so to deal with traffic going out of Felixstowe and into the Midlands. But the study that looked at option D has been ruled out by the government, and indeed all I can say is that Kent County Council and Essex County Council, who are looking at the local roads, are both supporting option C.
So supporting option C is because they weren't given the opportunity to look at options D and E. If they had had the options to look at D and E, we may well have got a different outcome. It's just that's why we've got to expand our horizons. I mean, David is entirely right. David talks to civil servants. The civil servants line is only options A and option C are on the table. We are trying to move this politically, and that's where Mike Revell, local councillor, is absolutely correct, is yes, oppose option C, but let's also say we are pro option E or D, and let's be more ambitious.
I'm Councillor Gerard Rice from Chadwell St Mary, and I've lived in the area since '58. Now, let's have the history lesson. You're half right, it's the Member of Parliament, but let's have the truth. Kent and Essex ganged up in the left. They decided it was going to be option C. Now, if you really want to send a message, you have to send a message not to your Member of Parliament. There's a man that sits in number 10 called David Cameron. That's where your letters have got to go. If we had 100,000 letters going to David Cameron, I'm sure he would take notice of us all. And I agree with the panel that it goes across the party politics. But let me just tell you about the A130. I was on the County Council at Essex, representing Chadwell from '89. They actually first started to look at the A130 in 1985. It was not built until 1997, and only because a change of government came in and there was a PFI. So the clear message must be, do not despair. I think Mike Revell is correct what he says. We should be talking about another option, which is option D. But the clear message I would give to everyone here is you write to Cameron. Cameron is the Prime Minister. He can change things. Because at the end of the day, and I will be political, there's a general election coming up in 2015, and people will have the chance to tell Cameron, we don't want it, and you obviously will decide which way you want to go. Now, when it comes to a legal challenge, and David is quite correct, the director, yes, there are options on the table, and there will be variants of option C. I've got no doubt of that in my mind at all. Then we could have a legal challenge against those routes. But I still reiterate, do not give up hope.
I think it is time that we got options D and options E both back on the table, because they make sense in all sorts of ways. As we know, option A, option C still impact on the M25, did nothing at all to alleviate the congestion we see on that road day in, day out. Options D and E could bypass it completely, and that just has to be good. If people want to write to the Prime Minister, then do that. I think writing to your local Member of Parliament, writing to the Secretary of State for Transport will have just a big an impact, and I would urge people to do that. Damien, talking about Boris Island, I genuinely don't think Boris Island will happen. I think Boris Island is Boris's distraction to encourage people in the west of London to vote for him. I think that's what that's all about. I entirely agree with the comments, though, about totally lifting the toll. It was back in 2002 they should have been lifted. It was a Labour government that didn't lift them. I thought it was wrong at the time, I still do. And frankly, that stretch of the M25, the crossing, is actually the A282, and I think we should rename it Robin Hood Way.
The neighbouring division of Western Heights. We have got to do something about Essex and Kent. They are complete bully boys on this issue. Last summer at full council, County wouldn't answer my simple question: which options you support, A or C? They'll either fobbed it off onto the cabinet member for highways, and he said, I'm not commenting until after it's publicised. Then at a subsequent full council meeting, and it's all on Essex County Council's website, so please have a look at the minutes and the agenda for full council meetings. The administration dealt with it through cabinet, so it wasn't debated by a single county councillor, just exclusive cabinet, that they was backing option C, and it's tough. The opposition was given about 10 minutes to discuss this, and I have to say most of the opposition, in fact all of it, opposed it for various sensible reasons. And the administration dealt with it as the Germans would after a football match and shut the game down. So we have got to do something about Essex County Council. Thurrock and Dartford are both small unitary authorities. You're surrounded by the GLA one side and Kent and Essex working together. There's proposals about the 130, make a lot of sense, but the point is there's two PFI projects, one at Sadler's Farm and one to have built the 130. The cost of just sorting those roads out is huge. And also, earlier raised last year, was a motion by the administration that runs Council Hall to have a lorry overtaking ban because they didn't have the money to widen the road. So the fact is, Essex and Kent are going to bully on Thurrock and Dartford with the assistance of the Greater London Assembly to get this option C built. Absolutely stupid.
Well, maybe they should. Unfortunately, there is a history of Kent County Council, Essex County Council working together, spending lots of money on various reports that they write and drawing lines on a map that come through Thurrock and not having the courtesy to speak to us about it. It's something that I've raised directly with successive leaders of Essex County Council and something that I've raised on more than one occasion with Paul Carter, leader of Kent County Council. I have to say that they haven't been doing it so much of late. The relationship has improved a little. Okay.
Applying to government, write your letters, because we had quite a few dealings with planning issues. And you've got a structural engineer telling us about D&E being most sensible, and other people into Essex and into the Fenlands. The thing is, I've looked at all the different options. I don't say I agree with anyone more than another, apart from the ones that we obviously object to. But you said earlier about thinking outside the box. I've looked at the geography, I've looked at the geology a certain amount, I've tried to talk to people and the Kent side and our side. And one thing, I would call it scheme A plus if you like. I agree with what's been said. Ideally, I wouldn't want to see anything on straight over the current crossing, the sea, through all the countryside and everything else. But there's precedents in this country, and if you go around Europe and think outside the box a bit, there's a lot more. Why hasn't anybody looked at, government or the local authority, and putting forward a road, rail, and people walking bridge? And if you think outside the box a bit and upset the least people, industry can take the problems with construction more than people, and then you don't ruin any people's lives and you don't take extra land. But if you're beefing up the A13 junction 30 and the M25, if we look at that, with the increase of the port, it's going to be huge. Even with what they're planning, and the man earlier said it's not fully set in stone, if you make that even better, a junction, come down the Dock Approach Road and go straight across Tilbury Docks. It's the narrowest crossing on the Thames, the firmest ground. There's a nice church the other side, which I'm sure they wouldn't want a great flyover over the roof. You could go underneath it. But, you know, the Tilbury to Gravesend Ferry, it's good when it goes, but the weather, it's not always there. Linking the rail for years, you've got to go into central London, you've got to go either Docklands Light Railway or into London to go across on the railway to get to Kent, and for them to come to Lakeside and to us. Why don't we look at other parts of the UK, certainly Europe, do a road, rail and people walking bridge and cycling, improve all that, and take it down the Dock Approach Road, straight across Tilbury Docks, industry areas which won't be so upset, through the middle of the power station the other side, ship the coal, I think we can manage that, and then go underground so you don't ruin a nice old church. And
I've been in Orsett for 15 years, I run a business in Grays, so I've got a fairly good idea of what happens in the area. If they really wanted to get rid of the tolls, they could do it in a weekend. I could do it with 400 cones. Forget about removing the toll booths, just cone them off. If you want the toll booths done, I could do it with a bulldozer in the weekend. So it's all smoke and mirrors.
All right, thank you very much. Can you speak up a little bit, John?
I'm John Ashley. I live in the east of the borough, much closer to option D. I'm in favour of option D. When this first idea of a crossing was proposed, the strategic infrastructure was based around the congestion at the tunnel, the Dartford crossing. I think since then that the strategic position has changed considerably. The problem now is not the Dartford crossing, it's the M25. And the talk recently is about an alternative route. A route that lends itself perfectly well to this is the A414 for the M1, which uses the old M10 spur of the M1 at Hemel Hempstead to Chelmsford, and then down the A130 and join up with the M2 to the west of the Bedway crossings. If that happens and you ever end up with a bridge crossing around that canvas, you'll end up with option C. We'll put a bridge across the river between Grays and Tilbury, which will become a huge white elephant.
In that case, what you would want to be doing is expressing as loudly and as clearly as possible, these are the problems, this is the environmental damage that it will cause, these are the benefits that you're claiming for it that actually it won't deliver, in order to influence the decision before it gets made. However, let's imagine for a moment that you're one of the cynics, which I'm personally not. I don't like to bring that kind of attitude to politics, but nonetheless, I know there are people out there who've been let down enough times that's how they feel. Well, if you believe that the decision has already been made, then what would you be doing right now? And what you in your cynical mind probably think will happen is that, okay, they'll come out with their announcement and they'll do this or that in order to kind of buy us off and try and sweeten us a little bit. Well, if that's the case, what you'd be wanting to do is get your markers down on the table as clearly and as loudly as possible that says, in other words, this is my price. This is the things that you have to do in order to stop this turning into a full-on revolt. And Thurrock has quite a good history of marching on London if you look back to the Peasants' Revolt and that sort of thing, so maybe that wasn't quite such a bad idea after all. But almost whichever is going on, you are not powerless. If the decision hasn't been made, then you still have the power to influence it. That must be the case. But even if the decision is heading in a certain direction, you still have the power to influence how it gets done. And it's hugely important that you exercise that power now, because the decision-making process, the final thing of going from high level down to detail, is where do you get a good package of mitigations and concessions and compensations or whatever, or do you get diddly squid?
In that consultation, all of the submissions that I had were submitted in good time and to the Secretary of State, and he has got those. Now, I don't want to make this political. Gerard Rice is trying to make it political for whatever gain. He's not right. If you just well, sir, just wait 1 second, and I'll tell you why. That is not how. If you just wait 1 second, sir.
Remember, all that will happen is nothing.
Well, that's the right cynical way.
Stand up. If you ask everybody in this hall, because we're being filmed, we've got people from the radio, yeah? Ask people if they are in favour, if they want to stand up, if they are against A, B or C. You want to take the message back, ask people.
Well, I think we've got the idea. Is anybody... I'll tell you what, let's do it this way, hang on.
The only way they will change their mind is by listening to people. They don't listen to people. They're not here tonight. Nobody's putting forward the government's case. Yeah?
Why? Let's get a response. Okay, let's get a response. When politicians have made up their mind, that's all there is to it.
Well, firstly, they haven't made up their mind. Secondly, I am here listening and have been listening all the way through this process. If you lived in Orsett, I wrote to you and invited you to take part in the consultation to make sure that people were aware of what was happening. And the reason that I want to just go back to the point that the gentleman was making is this proposal was first brought forward in 2009 under a Labour government. I have seen no indication at all from anyone on the other side of the chamber in the House of Commons that even if this decision is made, and I accepted in my opening remarks that I may well be punished at the ballot box because if the government made a decision to support option C, there is no indication whatsoever that the next government would change its view. as they haven't done with HS1, HS2, M25. There have been these meetings time and time and time again. I am here to represent your views, and I do take them back, and I tell them how angry people are, but I cannot hold back the tide like King Canute.
I understand. But when people are as angry as this, when people feel, and these are the people who live here, these are the people who are going to be affected, these are the people who should have a say, surely. What they think and what they feel and how their lives are going to be changed by this should have some effect.
I couldn't agree more. And that is why this meeting is taking place. That's why I'm here to listen. That's why I have made myself available. And I, rather than writing to David Cameron, of course write to David Cameron, that's fine. But you get a much better chance of getting that bundle and that information put across in person if you send it to me or your other members of Parliament.
Do you get enough people coming to your surgery at the weekend talking to you about this, or would you want more? Do you get enough letters? Would you like more? Do you get enough emails? Would you like more?
I had hundreds, literally hundreds of emails and letters. There were hundreds, over 5,000 submissions to the public consultation on this issue. Yes, I get about 300 emails a day. I welcome correspondence from all my constituents on this or any other issue. I'm not trying to say I don't understand the issue. Now, you'd asked, shouldn't people be listened to? Yes, of course they should. And that's what I'm doing, and I will put across those points. But shouldn't the people who are opposing option A be listened to? Shouldn't those who are potentially going to oppose option D be listened to? Shouldn't those who are being opposed option E be listened to? At some point, governments of all colours have to make a decision, otherwise we never get any infrastructure, we never get any development, we don't move forward. Now,
they're saying that they see no advantages to them for option C going across the river. They're not promoting it, and I think it's fair to say that they've told the leader of the council that they're opposing option C, opposing option C as well. So I don't think that DP World comes into it. However, the point that you make about Junction 30 does relate to London Gateway and the government's proposals for improvements on Junction 30, because the short-term measure is the £150 million scheme that will start in January next year, which will give improvements at Junction 30 and increased capacity that will last, according to the Department for Transport and Highways Agency's modelling, it will give you capacity for about 10 years. Now,
South Essex Wildlife Hospital, just across the road there. This proposal obviously bulldoze what we fought so hard for. I just want a quick show of hands. Who knew about the port being built? Okay, so there's quite a few of you. Now, I sit also on the committee of the biodiversity group under the heading of the council, and we knew very little about that. And I did smell a bit of a rat when the port was brought into fruition. Now, there is no way you can have the biggest container port in Europe down at Corriton and that A13 cope with it. And it's easy for DP World to say, well, we oppose it, but it's the hauliers that want it done. And from the meeting that was broadcast over in Kent, was it back in July? I'm sorry, I'll come back to you. Back in July, it's quite clearly there's a handful of people that stand to make a lot of money out of this. And there are some faceless civil servants and ministers up at government who are having their strings pulled by people that stand to make money out of that. And regardless of the mitigation, there is more important things to life than money, and I'm obviously very passionate about wildlife, but it affects all of our lives. And it's really sad that this is going to come down to money and the mitigation that everybody's going to be offered. Personally, I think it's a done deal. I understand Mr. Metcalfe's point of view that no decision has been made, but again, the strings are being pulled everywhere, and I really do think we have got a fight on our hands, and we do have to have that solidarity. Thank you.
Much easier to take the easy option and the cheaper option, which is just to say, expand the existing crossing at A. So why we think that C is the preferred option, I don't know, because we're here and it affects us. So all I'm saying is there is no decision made. Either A or C, both are in the mix. We are trying to expand the opportunities to look at alternatives.
But this is
though, is that let's keep fighting option C on the grounds that it is massively environmentally damaging. It carves up the historic remainder of Thurrock. It goes through villages and through the ancient fen. It has a devastating effect on this area and will change the face of Thurrock forever. So let's continue to fight it, let's continue the battle, but please don't be cynical. I will make sure your views are represented wherever I can, but I can't promise.
Because Horn on the Hill, I'm treasurer of the Horn on the Hill Society and Community Forum, also chairman of the Bartle Reminiscence Centre at East Tilbury. It's great to hear across the political spectrum that everyone's in accord with the MPs, and I think everyone here is technically against option C, not necessarily against there being another crossing. It's great to hear that the free flow will happen first before a decision is made. What I would like to suggest to the council, to Councillor Kent and his colleagues, on the government website there are a plethora of online petitions to enable people to come up and say, I'm against this, I'm for that, or whatever. We've heard from all of you saying, right to this, right to that, or whatever. Wouldn't it be better if the council were to put something on their website, an online petition, to encourage all of us and others in such a way to try and put options D and or E back on, object to option C, but to put the point that these other options have a valid and a good reason. By the council doing this, we will all be together at one, and not across the board.
Of course, yeah, I will point out that last year we ran a huge consultation exercise, part online, part by writing. I think we had about 700 responses online, so it wasn't a bad response. Of course we'll look at that. I'll talk to David tomorrow about how we get that started, but I would make a plea to the press that are in the room that if we do that, we need the backing of the press, we need the support of the press to publicise it and make sure that we do get, you know, a huge number of people signing up.
We've successfully just fought off some developers in building in our greenbelt, 350 homes at Heath Place. And I can say that we did that with pressure from our residents working with their local councillors together against building on our precious greenbelt. Because unlike some, I've lived here all of my life, and to me Thurrock matters. And political or not, our MP is not here tonight representing us, so I will urge you all, write to your MP, write to Jackie Doyle-Price in Thurrock and tell her we do not want that option A or option C. We've given alternatives that stack up, option D, option E. You may be able to represent Mr. Metcalfe up there, but we represent with passion here, passion for Thurrock residents and our greenbelt that matters very much to us.
Will you be telling your MP?
Sorry Jackie's not here, but I managed to make it. I'm really disappointed tonight that what we notice is that no one who can actually make this decision seems to know what problem they're trying to solve. And Stephen has spoken about national infrastructure, but we don't really know what that national infrastructure need is. And instead, we run the risk of living with the consequences of bad decisions made, where people are being forced to make a decision between option A and option C, neither of which seems to be clear to people in this room and beyond in the rest of Thurrock, benefit our community or are of national significance in order to be able to put up with the consequences. Now, we've had Stephen Hammond down here, the Transport Minister, and he high-handedly said the case for this crossing was too complicated to explain. Well, if a case is too complicated to explain, you haven't thought it through. And until we have a proper argument for a crossing, then we can have a conversation about where it might be. But at the moment, what we have is Stephen saying that a decision has not been made. The big decision has been made that this government, like the previous one, has decided that there will be a crossing with the fuzzy thinking of not being clear about the problem they are trying to solve. Until we are clear about that problem, we will always come up with the wrong answer. The people in this room will live with the consequences badly, as indeed will the people in Purfleet and around option A.
Do you think there should be...
I know there's an enormous amount of congestion, and I also know this is a growing community where we should have enormous economic advantages, as well as being able to protect our environment. Nobody seems to have an answer about how we can develop that properly, and until they do, everyone who's got any sense in this community is going to say, your case isn't proven, please leave us alone.
A plan that was dusted off, developed by the previous government, dusted off by this one, and resubmitted. And the point that we're all making is it's answering a question that was posed a decade ago, and that's what I've said right from the beginning. I agree that the case for option A and option C both are weak in my view. They don't address the problems other than perhaps dealing with some congestion, but even that is not particularly a well-made case. Hence, we are trying to expand the options.
I've heard we've got our chairman Orsett here, we've got Horndale, we've got Aveley. What I'd like to understand is how we take this forward. Is there a central unit? We talked about having a petition on the council website. How do we take this forward to make sure that all of the surrounding Graves, Aveley, Tilbury, everyone that's impacted?
All right.
What's the communication? Do the forum chairman, do they talk to each other? Are they aware of a central system? How they can communicate? How they can direct?
Okay, so
a response, the council submitted a response. The process has been running and the consultation has finished, and as David said, we were expecting an answer, I think originally last September, then it's been delayed, now we're being told perhaps this summer. Now I've got some information that says we're going to wait and see what the impact of free flow tolling is, but in theory the consultation has finished and the decision should have been made. The fact it hasn't means that we have opportunities to get people to listen. So, as the consultation has closed, what I would suggest is that we do the petition, because I think that is a good way of showing the strength of feeling. I also would encourage you to write to your Member of Parliament. Now that will be me for this area, because option C is exclusively in my constituency. Option A is in my colleague Jackie Price's constituency, and I'm sure she will be at the meeting held to discuss option A. Write to me with your views, and I will ensure that that body of correspondence gets in front of the right person.
By way of example, I wrote to the Minister of State for Transport, got a long letter back. The key thing she thought was a reason for rejecting option C would be habitat protection or air quality. I wrote to David Cameron about air quality, which I haven't done something about, and I got a reply to say that he sent that away to consultants and they'll reply to me in due course. So my point is, I've, by writing, done something. And I think there's a lot of people here, and if everybody could do something like that, that'd be fine. All the other ways that have been mentioned. Incidentally, in order to get to David Cameron, I took my letter to Stephen Metcalfe, who then passed it on to him. So that's an example of what's happened.
Okay, let's go to the lady.
Lady said, how do all the forums connect? Unfortunately, Orsett itself doesn't have a forum, but Horndon and Baldwin do, and I attend both regularly. I think both chairs are probably here, and that is the way how we can communicate, and they communicate things to me, which I report to the council, or indeed to Stephen. So that's how we actually do it.
The Labour parliamentary candidate for South Basildon and East Thurrock. I think a lot of everybody's cynicism tonight is to do with the contradiction that we heard earlier regarding the decision, whether it's going to be made in the summer, the officer stating the case for the decision being made in the summer, and the politician's view that the decision hasn't been made. So I think, you know, on behalf of everyone here, I think it's a big enough deal, obviously, by the amount of people that are here tonight, that we do invite the Secretary of State himself to come and talk to the people and let us know exactly what he's got in mind.
To invite the Secretary of State down. As I see it at the moment, the issue regarding the decision making, the fact it hasn't been made, I see as a positive. It is a changing landscape, and I think it shows that we collectively are having an impact. The fact that people have been calling for free flow tolling to be in place and to see the impact of that before making a decision about the crossing. And the fact the Minister says to me this afternoon that's what they're minded to do, I think is a positive. So yes, we can invite Patrick McLaughlin down here to see the options, but I think what we've got to do first is start making the case about why, as we have done consistently, why option C is wrong for Thurrock, and why we think we need evidence. We need to show them that B, D and E are better for everyone concerned, including pensioners whose pensions have been transferred into a company that eventually collapsed, and after 4 years their former employer has rolled over and agreed to compensate them, and that was a real trial, but it was just sheer perseverance and keeping on going, not giving up. And that would be my message to you, is don't give up, keep persevering, keep involving your elected politicians, and together we will fight this. Can't guarantee we will win, but we will try. We will try and we'll keep you informed. And if we do that, who knows? Anything is possible if you keep on doing it.
What he said is not just Orsett that's going to...
You speak up a little bit.
It will be the whole of Thurrock, and we just run a campaign, and what we did, we knocked door to door and got people to sign a petition, because not everybody's got email, they can't do email, they haven't got a computer. So I think that we should be probably in on it as well, getting a committee going, uniting, having meetings and getting off their backsides and getting out there, perhaps knocking at doors and getting people's signatures so they can send them in. The more you've got, the better chance you're going to get.
You've got a loudest voice in here, that's what he really said to
Well, Mr. Pessimistic here definitely has, yeah. Look, I think a couple of things. A lot of passion in the room, definitely. We're all against it, even the guys sitting up the front. We're all fighting for the same cause. My only concern is that, and take this in the best possible way, guys, is that you guys can't scream and shout like we can scream and shout. And I think the biggest problem that we actually have here at the moment is that there are committees, there are forums, there are action groups, there are environmental people, there are lots and lots of people, but none are actually talking to each other. You guys didn't know we were here, and that's probably as much our fault as it is anybody else's, but we've got to join together, and it's actually the voices of the people in this room, and your neighbours, friends, kids, and your relatives that have lived here forever. It's actually our voices that need to be heard, and I do definitely get that by putting it through people like Mr. Cameron and of course our local MPs, and to be fair to Stephen, he's been good, but I actually think we're the ones that need to be heard and not them.
Listen to someone who is screaming and shouting. Constructive dialogue is the way you change people's minds. That's the best way. Doesn't mean you don't have to do it with passion. You can do it with passion, but do it constructively.
Totally agree. So I'm not against
coming along. You know, we decided to put this public meeting on at short notice. We weren't sure who would get to come along. We weren't sure that the room would be full. It's been more than full, standing room only at the back. And that really does show that the passion, the energy that people have here to fight this crop. The council, Stephen, we can't do it on our own. We can only fight this with the community behind us. Our job is to help you to fight this, and that's what we're going to do. So once again, we are going to hang about for a while. Thanks everybody for your time tonight.